Hi, Nathan. Sorry to miss last week, mister.
Hey, Tony. How you doing?
Hey, Steve, how's it going, mister?
Oh, all right.
How's Kirsten?
She's fine. She just finished practicing fiddling.
All right.
Yeah.
Good deal. I had to
Hey
miss
there.
last week. I had to do a vaccination clinic for first responders with the health department for my job.
Oh my gosh.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's pretty wild out there, man. So I'm glad to be able to do something about it.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful for this. I'll tell you, Nathan, I really appreciate you doing this and putting it together for us in these crazy times. It's a thread of sanity when everything else is just, everything's nuts.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we're able to do it too. That's one. I mean, this has all been just so weird, and I've tried to carry on, teaching the best I can, and it's odd, but it's nice to have that time to have something to look forward to and seeing some other faces and seeing some other people.
Yeah. Well, good deal. Are we just going to be in standard tuning today?
Yeah, we're just starting in standard tuning, and last week we all tried to learn boil them cabbage down. We're gonna work on a little more and add some to it today.
Took your advice and fiddled around a bit. You
Yeah,
said just kind of do whatever you feel like doing. That was
yeah.
fun.
I think it's because part of what you're doing is training your muscles and to move to reach the strings in the right way, and also training your fingers to feel everything. So the more time you just feel, spend physically with it, even if you don't exactly know what you're doing, I think it just helps you become more comfortable with it overall. Hi, Ella.
I guess your recording didn't go through last week.
Yeah, I'm looking now and making sure it's recording. What happened last week is I got on really early and it was automatically recording, and I paused it and started it back. And then when I went back to send it to everybody, all I could find was that very first clip where we hadn't done anything yet.
I see.
So hopefully this time, if I don't touch it till the very end, we'll have everything there.
I did go back and look at the Winter Tune School session that you did just for giggles. So I appreciate you doing that too. And Carla was able to get me copies of all those videos.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't able to do that. I had to work on that day too. So, yeah.
Well, hopefully you always have the video and stuff, and we understand if people can't make it, especially in the situation you're in right now. You're doing a lot of important work.
Yeah, it's getting ramped up right now. We're going to be doing a lot of it here for the next several months.
Mm-hmm. Are you here in Kentucky, Tony?
Yeah, I'm up in that place that Roscoe Holcomb sang about. I wasn't born and raised in Covington, but I spent a lot of time up there.
I knew you were from up that area, but I didn't know if you were in Ohio or Kentucky.
Yeah, I'm in the county just south of Cincinnati, Kenton County.
Mm-hmm.
Independence is where we live on wife's parents' farm, wife's grandparents' farm. Nathan, do you know if they're thinking about doing some kind of online version of the Lexington gathering, or
Not
is
that.
this it?
Uh, this might be it. I mean, the last communication that I had from Brett, he just, you know, had kind of, called the gathering off for sure, obviously, for this year. And just, I know he's got a lot going on and everybody's trying to do different things. So, hope, keep our fingers crossed for next year, I guess, is what we'll do.
A nice community. I really like the folks I've gotten to know so far.
Yeah. I hear they may try to, by summer there's a gathering they started in Elliott County a couple years ago. I don't know if you got to go to that one. It was a fun little outdoor weekend festival.
Nice.
And if things are better, they might try to carry on with that this year. But it was one of those that only got to happen for, I guess, 1-2 years, and then didn't get to happen last summer. So. But we'll see. I mean, everything's just up in the air,
Yeah. Well, there's hope. It's getting better in several different directions.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the good thing. Well, we can go ahead and kind of get started. I mean, some people will probably jump on later, and some people I've heard from Jillian for sure, and she can't make it this week, so hopefully this time the video works better. Last time I messed that up, I guess, and didn't really catch it all. But right now it says it's recording, and as long as I don't touch anything, hopefully when I stop it in the end, I'll be able to just send it all out to you. So last time, for Tony, you weren't here last time. We kind of all talked and introduced each other, and talked a little bit about the fiddle, and some things. Some people had never touched it before, so we talked a little bit parts and how it works and things like that. Talked a little bit about how to take care of the instrument. And then we, at the end there, kind of jumped into starting to play a tune and pulling the bow across the strings. So you didn't really miss a whole lot, and hopefully the video I sent out was a little bit to practice with at least. But hopefully this week we can all kind of jump right into it together. Does anybody have any questions for me before I start? Okay. Well, at any time, if you want to say anything, just jump in, raise your hand. Sometimes if we're all trying to play, it's better if you're trying to play along with me, just put yourself on mute and play along. But anytime you want to jump in, just feel free. So me and Steve were just talking about a while ago. Steve said that he's been spending a lot of time just kind of exploring the instrument, taking time to just pull the bow across the strings and get a feel for it, get more comfortable with how to hold it. While it's always good at the beginning to make sure you're in tune, to just do that. Take some time, pull the bow across the strings, think about, listen to the instrument as you're pulling the strings, make sure that all the strings are blending together nice and that you're pulling the bow across and trying to get a good even tone. So let's all just start. Let's just, if Ella, if you don't care, maybe show us like how our bow hold. Remember how we were, if you can kind of watch her as we go along, you can.
I guess I could do audio. So we were either going to do the thumb going on the bottom of this with the fingers resting over, or on the bottom of this padded part. Okay. And I can do it as we're playing too.
Yeah. So you just want to be conscious of that and make sure that you're, you want your pinky to be kind of loose. You want to have a firm grip, but you want it to be relaxed at the same time. And let's all just start just by pulling the bow across the strings in any way you want to. Pick some open strings, just feel it. And you can take time to feel around. You can put your fingers on certain strings and just experiment a little bit. Get your body loosened up. Think about, just think about relaxing back into it. Relax your shoulders, put your feet flat on the ground. And just take some time moving around a little bit. All right. So I like being able to watch and see how everybody's moving. At least it's really helpful, even though I can't hear you. So let's focus on the bow a little bit to start. We've talked about how to hold our bow. We're getting more comfortable with holding it like that in our hand. You want to be able to kind of move it around all different ways and have control of it. And we'll set this down real quick. So when you pull the bow across the strings, there's one thing to think about. As you're pulling down, if you want to bend your wrist this way, right? And as you pull up, you want to bend your wrist this way to back it back up. So as you're pulling down, the wrist bends away. As it comes up, it bends back towards you. So take some time, just first of all, try putting your bow on those bottom two strings, the A and the E string. Start up here with your wrist kind of bent up like this. Put it on the strings and just try to pull down with a constant tone, and as you come down, you're slowly bending your wrist the opposite way. You look at Ella there, yeah. And as you're doing that, try to keep a constant note playing, and try to just go slow till you get to the end of your bow. If at first it seems to bounce as you do that, you want to put a little bit more pressure. So take time, come down with the bow, bend your wrist, come back up the other way, bend it back down, back up the other way. And if you notice where your elbow is, if you lay the bow on top of the A and the E string, you feel where your elbow position is. Now if you just shift the bow to where it's touching the two middle strings, your elbow comes a little bit higher, right? I'm gonna back up a little bit here. So your elbow comes a little bit higher. Then to get to the top strings, your elbow just comes up a little bit more, right? So there's really kind of three positions that your elbow moves this way, and your wrist is moving and bending this way. Does that make sense to everybody? So always a good warm-up exercise, I think, is to think about your bow, is to sit down, bow across those strings, and get in your mind, okay, am I bending my wrist the right way? Am I keeping the bow in the middle between here and the bridge? If you watch yourself in a mirror, or even you can use your webcam, I guess, and make sure that when you are coming down that your bow is staying somewhat straight. What can happen if you're not bending your wrist right, as you push up, if your arm is straight, if your wrist is staying straight the whole time, your bow is going at a crazy angle like this, right? So when you put that movement in there, you can keep it more in the middle where you want it. And it's not going to be completely perfect, but you're going to have the best tone if you can focus on that as you're practicing. Does that make sense? So last time, as we were playing Boil Them Cabbage Down, we were using just a straight down, up, bow stroke, right? So we did 4 notes on our second finger to start. So the motion that we're doing with our bow is just a straight down up, right? So if you count that, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And that was how we were bowing. We were counting the 4 on every finger. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the second half, it changed a little bit in that in the last few notes, we split it and played 2 beats of each note, right? So we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4. Right? And that was the difference between the end of the A part and the beginning of the A part. So that's just a very easy bowing technique, just straight back and forth, right? Another thing we can do is add a little bit of a shuffle to it. So right now we're playing long bows on every beat. Well, if we add 2 short bows on the second and fourth beats, we get this rhythm that is often referred to as the bum diddy rhythm. Bum diddy, bum diddy, bum diddy, bum diddy. Right? So as you play this rhythm, if you can keep that in your mind and kind of say that along, it really does help. It helps a little bit, you know, especially if you're not used to counting time in music or you've never done anything like that before. It really simplifies it to just getting the rhythm in your head. So if we start with a long bow, and then it's 2 short bows, and then a long bow, 2 short bows. So bum diddy, bum diddy, bum diddy, bum diddy. So if we do that in terms of how we were counting earlier, it becomes 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and right? So, and also if you notice what's happening is if you start on a down bow and then you do that short, your third bow is an up bow, which is the same as it was when we were going back and forth. Just adding a little more rhythm to it. So let's all try that together. So remember, you know, always focus on being relaxed and how you're holding your bow. And let's just start on that A string that we were starting on and just play that bum diddy rhythm. 1, 2, ready, go. 1. How's everybody doing? How's it feel? Okay? So, if you can kind of, you know, sometimes I think about playing this instrument is like trying to pat your head and rub your belly at the same time, that sort of thing. So if you can now, so last time let's just walk through the fingerings of that tune again, of Boil Them Cabbage Down. So we started on the second finger. And then we went to the third. All right, so now if we take that and we add to it the bum diddy rhythm with the same fingerings, it becomes even though we don't play it at a faster tempo, it becomes a little more exciting. It's, in some ways it sounds like it's getting faster, right? So we're adding more music in between each of those beats, right? So if we start with that rhythm, right? And then sorry, I missed, but so if we start on the second finger, does that make sense to everybody? Let's all try that together. And yeah, maybe if you kind of are confused on the fingerings, if you watch Ella, she can show that part. All right, ready? So I'll go together. So just another thing real quick. So sometimes when we're playing, you'll hear a fiddler start just on an open string, playing just that rhythm, that bum diddy rhythm. Right? Fiddlers often call that taters. I don't really. Ella, do you have any idea where? I have no idea. I've never known where that term come from, but fiddlers call it taters. So when you start the tune, first you play taters, which is 4 beats that sets the tempo. And you just start on, an easy way to play taters is to start on the string of the key that we're in. So we're in the key of A. So if we start on our A string and just play that open string for 4 beats with that bum diddy rhythm, then that gives everybody else a cue as to when to start into the tune, right? So if you're playing with other instruments, the fiddler would play that part first, and then everybody would know when to come in on the downbeat. So that's, when you're listening to play along, it's always a good thing to listen for. And then if you don't know the tune and you're going to play along with somebody, I think it's often best to listen to them play the taters listen to them play the taters so you got the tempo before you really try to even jump in and play along, And a good thing to do if you're trying to just, if you're trying to watch videos on YouTube or something, they do have a feature to slow down videos. It's always a good thing to slow it down. You have to be able to play something slow before you can play it fast. But I've used that a lot. Really, it's really helpful. I'm glad they have that feature because it slows it down without changing the pitch. There are, some things if you slow the music down, the pitch changes, which makes it really hard to play along with. But anyway, so let's all just try to play that really slow using that bum diddy rhythm. And I'll start and I'll play the taters part. So. let's do it a little bit slower. 1, 2, ready, go. How's everybody doing? Is it too fast? Am I going too fast? Do you want to slow it down anymore? Everybody think they got it? Okay. All right, so that's one way, you know, we've added a little bit more to what we know of the tune. And often when I approach any tune, I try to think of it first in terms of, okay, what is the framework? What's the skeleton of the tune? Which is the basic melody. Try to figure that out first. In basic bowing, just getting the notes down, right? And I practice that first. And once I have that down, I try to add a little bit more to it. There is a B part to this tune I think we'll jump into and try to add to today. It's got some different technique to it. But another thing we can do to add to this, what we already know, is to add a little bit of harmony to it. So right now, everything that we're doing, we're playing all on that one string, on that A string. Well, when you're pulling your bow across the strings, the way the bridge is shaped, it's just as easy to bow 2 strings as it is 1. So if you bow the open string underneath it, you can add another note in there, and we can, in this tuning, we can play that open note underneath of this, and it adds a little bit of harmony to it. So it starts to sound like this. See how that works? And the other thing is, you can use that bottom string as a way to try to have something to play with. You know, if you can hear that harmony, and you can adjust your fingers if it's a little bit flat or sharp to try to match that. But that adds just a little bit more to this tune if we want to add some harmony to it. So let's all try that together. So we're just going to try to start on those bottom 2 strings. First, just take some time pulling the bow across the strings and where you're bowing both of them. And then this all I'll play the taters, and we'll try to do it real slow, and we're just going to bow both of those strings together and do the exact fingerings we were doing before. How's everybody feel about that? Okay? Yeah. Okay, so we'll start. Yeah. Go ahead.
I have the same problem I had with the guitar. Big fat fingers. Okay, so when I'm drawing the bow across 2 strings, I'm not getting because my fingers hitting the other string.
And that's one thing that'll help to think about. So, you know, the strings are pretty close together on this instrument. One thing to try to focus on is when you're putting your fingers down, you want to bend a lot in this knuckle right here, to where you're coming down, directly over top of the string. You don't want your fingers to flatten out to where it may be laying over on top of one of the other strings. And you have to kind of roll. You have to kind of roll your wrist under to get under top on top of it. And yeah, if you can see how Ella is kind of holding her wrist there, and it helps you get kind of up over on top. You want your fingers to come more up over on top of the string, or else it is very easy to have your fingers touching another string, and if it's kind of just slightly laying on it and not really pushing it down at all, it's just going to kind of screech and sound bad.
I would also add that it helps to have really short fingernails. That's one of the biggest things. I mean, most of you probably know that anyways, but yeah, if you're, I mean, mine are even a little bit too long, but you're going to want to be at the very tops of your fingernails connected to this, because otherwise that'll cause even more problems.
Yeah, that's a good point. And
I got a question related to all that.
yeah.
So am I trying to hold my wrist away from the body of the fiddle, or am I trying to rest my heel of my hand like right on the?
Kind of cut out a little bit there. I didn't hear the last thing you said.
So am I trying to do this, or am I trying to?
So you really want to. I get lazy and let mine rest like this sometimes. Honestly, when I first started playing, I held mine down here because I'd watched a lot of videos of old-time fiddlers who played that way. But really, you need to have your wrist out of the way. Yeah, like that. Because you're going to be able to play in better tune and everything if you can get in that habit. I've heard of people say, like, if you imagine you were holding like a tennis ball or something in your hand, behind the neck. If you had like a tennis ball stuck in there, if you can imagine that, that's a good, you actually want a lot of the weight of the instrument to be held up back here by your chin to where you can move pretty freely. It's really easy, and I'm guilty of it a lot, but it's really easy to kind of get lazy and let your wrist do this, and you start to support more of the weight of the instrument here. But really, you want to, to be able to move up here pretty freely. Okay, good. So let's talk a little bit about some music theory, kind of building scales, like why, like for this tune we're in the key of A, why do we use those notes and those fingerings? And as we go along throughout the weeks, we'll kind of, there's some easy ways on this instrument to, once you learn a pattern of fingerings, to be able to transfer that pattern to play in a couple different keys just by starting on a different string, right? So right now, like for the last tune that we played, our three positions, we had the open string, which is A, right? And then our first finger had a space, roughly about the width of your finger from the end of the string here, right? From the nut. And that note is a B. So one thing you can do is to practice your positions is to use a tuner. And that first note is A, the second note is B. Use a tuner to hold and move your finger around until you get the feeling of where that note is. And the more you do that, like, it'll become kind of second nature. It's like you almost start to feel a groove or something that is there, right? And you're also training to use your ears to know that when you hit it wrong, you might be able to adjust for it a little bit, right? So the second note in that, so this being in the key of A major, we start on our A string. Our second note is B, So if you don't know much about how music theory works, in between each letter you have a flat or a sharp. So from here an A, here a B, this note back here that's up against the nut is either an A sharp or a B flat. Both the same name depending on how you're going in the scale, up or down, right? That amount of space between A and B is what is called a whole step. So a whole step is, has that flat or sharp in between it, which means that a half step would be the note in between, right? Does everybody follow me? That makes sense? Okay. So with that in mind, there is a formula. Yeah, she's got it all written right there. Nice. Okay, so there's that really helps. And actually some of this I might, as we get more into theory and stuff, we can type some of this up for everybody to follow. But the rule to remember that has to do with all music theory is that every letter has a flat or sharp in between it, except for B to C and E to F. Those are only a half step apart, so they're, that note in the middle. So if you're counting from A, our notes in the scale become A, B, and then our next note is a full step beyond B, so it makes it a C sharp. If it was back here against our first finger, it's a C. Does that make sense to everybody? Which meant that the third note that we played on that string is a D. Right? So we have these three positions. Now if we keep going up the scale, the next note that we want is an E. So then we jump down here to our open E string. The next note that we want, because E and F is only a half step, if we follow that same pattern of fingerings, we get an F sharp, then we skip a half step, make a whole step, it becomes a G sharp, and then our very last note is back to A. So on these two strings, if we keep those same three fingering patterns, that plays that whole major scale. Does that make sense to everybody? Go ahead.
I was just going to say that also, once you start to learn different scales, which, as you know, will have different notes being sharp and different notes being flat, just depending on what the scale is going to be, on the violin, you'll have fingers that will touch and in their positions, and you'll have fingers that won't touch. So in the key of A, for example, the tune that we're playing, we've got our first finger and our second finger, and they're not really touching in A, but because that's a C sharp and a B, but if we had a C natural and a B, they would be touching, which is going to help you when you're playing quickly. So depending on what the scale is, you're going to have spaces between your fingers that are about this big, or they're going to be touching, which is going to actually be really helpful for pitches as well.
Right. And in that there's a couple different patterns that you can use that are the same fingering patterns in different, in different keys. So really, like, once you learn a few patterns, this pattern we just learned of leaving that space between your first and second, and your second and third being together. For one example is if we start on the A string and we do that all the way down to the E string, that's an A major scale. if we use those safe fingerings, but we start up here on the D string, we get a D major scale with the exact same amount of space in between fingers, or this finger being together. And the reason that is that each scale is built on a series of full steps and half steps. So in order to build a major scale, you start at a pitch. It goes whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Right? So any note that you start on, if you follow that, that will give you the major scale. And that's why that is. So it gives you the ability to, as it plays out on the violin, it gives you the ability to move certain patterns of fingers over to a different string and play in a different key.
I've got a question about that. What Ella had said about your fingers touching on that A string, if you play that out, it almost sounds like a minor scale. Tell me if this is right. Doesn't that turn it into an A minor scale?
So if it was minor, it would be that third note, that C. So if you played that C sharp as a C, if you lowered that, that's going to make that minor. Yeah. But another thing is that, so that C note, a lot of times that second finger we use in the key of G a lot. All right, so if we take those notes and, essentially, what a key does is throw away all the other notes you don't need and leaves you with the ones that you need, right? So you're not hunting around so much. If a song is in that key, which notes you're going to be using, which fingers you're going to put in what positions, right? So the second part to this tune goes down on the E string, and it adds adds us crossing over to another string with our bow, something we haven't really done. But if you got, if you got that down to where you were bowing two strings at the same time, it's not so hard to come down and play the melody note on the E string. But let me play the whole B part through here pretty slow. Just let you hear it. We're starting here. We're actually going to start on our third finger on the E string. So if you notice one thing, so the very end of that B part is pretty much what we've already learned at the end of the A part. And that's, I think that's a common thing with a lot of tunes, is sometimes, have in both parts have something common like that ties it together. So the first part that we're going to start, so this is a little bit of a different technique in that we're going to slur some notes together in one bowing. So if we start on our third finger, and what we're going to do is we're going to come down with our bow, and as we're coming down, we're just going to lift that third finger back to our first. So it's kind of a pull off. You're pulling off and creating two notes out of one bow. So, right? Right? So that's the first two notes, and then after that we're going to go to an open string, and then we're going to come up, and our next two notes is our second finger on the A string. So if we do that real slow. Okay, so if everybody has that part down, essentially what we're going to do is we're going to repeat that 3 times, and then the 4th time we're going to do that same lick, only we're going to end on our first finger on the A string. So it goes like this. Does that make sense? Let's all try that together. 1, 2, ready, go. How does everybody feel about that? Let's do it all together again then. 1, 2, ready. So after that, all we do is go back to our second finger on the A string and essentially play the end of the A part. Does that make sense, everybody? All right, so now let's try to put the 2 parts together. So we'll start on the A string, and I'll play the taters. We'll try to do it real slow. So the other thing let's talk about real quick, I forgot, is the form of tunes. So typically tunes are called A part or a B part, C part, maybe even a D part if you got a really interesting tune with 4 parts, right? And forms are written out like if you saw a piece of music and it said the form was A-A-B-B, that means you would just repeat each part all the way through twice. Some tunes may just be A, B, B. You may see, just one part once and the other part twice. So when you're talking about a form of a tune, if you see that written anywhere, that's what that means. So for this, the form will be A, A, B, B. So we're going to play the whole A part twice. So, everything that we've learned, repeat that, and then we'll do the whole B part twice. Does that all make sense? All right. Here we go. who found themselves like trying to think ahead what the next part is, and right. You know, I think that a good thing to do when you're practicing, when you're playing along with somebody like that, is to, if you get lost, just first of all think, well, what key am I in? Let me play that string, and think of that string, and try to keep the rhythm until it comes back around where you're familiar and you're like, oh yeah, I know where it starts now, right? So like, ideally we're all learning to do this, that we can all be in a big room together and playing along. And part of it is trying to learn tunes on the spot. If you're in a jam with people and somebody starts something you don't know, what's your best chance of being able to figure out how to play along? And one thing to do is think what key it's in, think the notes that you know that are in that key, right? And just try to keep the rhythm, and listen for things that sound familiar. Because the more you play, you'll hear little phrases that you'll hear in another tune, and you'll be like, oh, I've heard that before. I know how that goes. If you hear something that goes, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense, right? I've heard that before. So that's my advice for, if you get lost, just try to think of the key that you're in, stay on that, think of where your notes are, and listen for something familiar to come back around, and then jump in again. Any questions? Any parts of that tune we need to break down again?
I've got a question.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm playing, and I'm kind of old. My elbow, it's like, do you relax this part here to keep it from coming in and like keeping tension on your elbow?
You kind of want to bring your elbow a little bit forward. I don't know if you can kind of see, a little bit forward to allow your hand to be able to roll over top, right? But you want to always make sure that you don't have any real hard pressure anywhere in your body. If you're feeling something, too much tension in your neck or in your shoulder, you want to try to adjust for that a little bit. And, one thing you can do is experiment with different places where it may feel natural to put your chin, because there are different options for chin rests that are kind of set in different positions here. That could help once you realize what is comfortable. But you definitely don't want it to ever hurt anything. You definitely don't want to feel pain when you're playing. If you're feeling pain, you're definitely doing something wrong. So don't strain too much too. I mean, it's really easy. When I first started playing, I would grit my teeth a lot, and I didn't really realize it. But I was like trying to hold it under here, and I was just chomping down, and like I would practice for a while, and I would feel my jaw was sore. And it was because I was holding so much tension, because I felt so. It just felt foreign and awkward. So yeah, so always just try to always be relaxed. Try to make sure you're being relaxed and not focusing too much and putting too much pressure on anything. Should we all play through it again one more time together? All right, here we go. Looked like it sounded good.
Lots of fun.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's I don't know, once you really get into playing fiddle, it can become kind of addictive. I've known a lot of people who um, went from once they kind of discovered it, they're like spending 8 hours a day sawing away on it, which is great. That's how people get to be really good. But
My wife, Kristen, is a classically trained violinist, but when she
nice.
found old time fiddle music, she got addicted.
Really,
Yeah,
well, that's great. That's great.
yeah, yeah.
Because sometimes it's not always the case. But it's, it, to me, any kind of folk music is great and authentic. Or all music, really. I love all music.
We'll be looking for some fireside duets with you guys.
Yeah. That'd be a lot of fun. Well, it's nice that she's grown up playing this instrument too. That means she can tolerate you learning to play it, right?
Well, she was tolerating me in the other room there.
Yeah. Well, let's see. We're about out of time. So think about. Last week we talked a lot about developing a practice routine. I think it's really important to, if you're not in the habit of playing, to figure out a way to build it into your life and do it at least a little bit every day. As much as you can. Obviously, the more the better, but also try to focus like when you practice to make it kind of a focus thing, kind of like we did class today, where we started by just warming up, playing whatever we felt like, and then we moved into playing the tune that we're familiar with, and then we took some time to work on some bowing and playing scales and thinking about the theory part of it, and then we added something new and tried to practice something new. So if you kind of structure your practice that way, it can help you learn a little bit better, as opposed to sometimes it's easy to just sit down and be like, I'm going to saw away on this tune that I really know and I love. And there's nothing wrong with doing that too. You just don't want to neglect all the other parts of it that are really important just to build into your practice, even though some of the parts when it comes to theory and bowing techniques may not be as fun. You just want to make sure you don't neglect those. And also as you build tunes, you want to make sure that you're practicing all those tunes that you know to keep them fresh in your mind, because it's really easy to learn a new tune and that's your favorite and that's what you play for a week, and you didn't play any of the other stuff that you know and want to keep fresh in your mind too. So that's kind of, that's just always think of that, and I'll probably mention that from time to time, just building your routine and how you structure your practice time. Anybody got any questions or anything you want to say before we go? Yep.
Yeah, that chart that Ella had. Ella, is that available somewhere online or?
I can find it online and I think last week I said I would send out some notes and then I lost paper, but I can look for that A from last week's notes, and B, I can either create this chart and make it a little bit better than that or find it online. Yes. Yeah, I can find just something that kind of aligns with what we've talked about today, so you're not really just fishing on the internet, and then make it accessible to our class.
Yeah, and I might have something. I know I have like a number chart too that lays out the notes that are in every key, and I might be able to dig that up and scan it and send. It's in a book that I have, which is pretty handy, just for understanding, keys and everything, and being able to transpose into different keys. But if we can also, the key is take that knowledge and transfer it to this, and how you know, and everybody thinks a little bit different. I tend to think almost in terms of like building shapes. I think of like, you know, little shapes and patterns in my mind. Some people think better in terms of numbers. Some people even see music in colors, you know, so everybody's different, but we'll try to give all those resources that we can to everybody so that you can make the best use of all of it, you know.
Cool. Yeah, if you could put a citation for that book too, so maybe we could pick it up on Amazon or something like that.
Yeah, the book that I have is just called the Nashville Number System, and it's a pretty it's a pretty thin little book that explains how that system works, and it comes along with a CD where you can like listen to the songs and read the charts. And it's a lot, so it's really handy for like writing chord charts and stuff, but you can kind of use the same, you know, same system for writing out melodies and writing harmony parts and things like that too. So but it's just called the Nashville Number System. It's like a little kind of spiral binder type book that.
That just helps people play in different keys pretty easily.
Well, not necessarily. It's that book's not necessarily condoned just to the fiddle. You know, it's talking generally like in terms of theory and chord structures and stuff. But one of the things I'd like to do as we move along is take, like, you know, next week we might take this tune and we can talk about moving it and playing it in a different key, and then we'll also learn another tune. You know. So we can kind of, as we go along, talk a little bit more about those kind of methods to like easily in your head figure out how to play in different keys based on the patterns we've already learned. Sound good?
Yep.
All right. Well, this has been fun, and nobody's got anything else. We'll log off and we'll send some notes out, and hopefully this recording will save, and I will be sending that back out to everybody as soon as it's available. I think like it takes a while to upload to the system where I can email it to everybody, but
Okay, thank you.
all right. Y'all have a good evening.